So welcome to my presentation. It's going to be about this tool called Ligolo-ng, and it's just a tool that helps you pivot into an internal network so that you could use your own machine to be able to hack into an internal network. Here, I'm just an overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to give some of my background and then a brief explanation on pivoting. And where it fits in like the ethical hacking cycle, and then my experience with the Ligolo-ng, and then I'm going to teach you how to actually install the tool and what commands you need to run to actually get this tool up and running and functional. So my name is Jacob, but my handle is Neosite. And how I got into cybersecurity is my brother changed my slides, but I actually had my brother tricked me. And so what happened was I got back from you could say, a 2-year vacation for the church that I go to. And for some reason, I was like, you know what, let me be a doctor. And I took a biology class, and I hated it instantly. Biggest regret. And so I was still just taking general education, but my brother reached out and he tricked me by saying, hey, there's this really good course, it's free. And I'm like, I can't say no to free, so I went for it. The course was, I think it's like the Complete Guide to Ethical Hacking by TCM Security. And so I ended up taking that course, getting the certification, and then my brother then took me to SAINTCON, and after that I was just hooked. I was hooked on just the industry. And so again, that's why I'm like, my brother actually tricked me. So now I'm a contract penetration tester. I've been doing that for like 3.5 years now. And I'm also full-time an information security engineer. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to briefly go over, it says the 5 stages of pen testing, but this is specifically for ethical hacking. And so you'll start with reconnaissance, and then you'll go into scanning and enumeration, you'll gain access, and then you'll do some exploitation, which will give you that access. You'll then start maintaining access and covering your tracks, and that's kind of where pivoting falls into the ethical hacking cycle. It's kind of that later half after you've already gained access onto an initial machine. So what is pivoting and why is it important? So pivoting, I love this definition that I found. It's to extend your reach to networks that are not directly accessible from your position. So it's that difference maker into being able to see more. I kind of like to think of this the same way that just the term pivoting in basketball is. In basketball, you can pivot off of one foot and you can turn to either get additional space or to see additional things that are going on in the court to eventually, score a basket. It's important to know because pivoting is essential to some exams and certifications. When I took the PNPT, or that's the Practical Network Penetration Tester exam by TCM Security, and you need to know pivoting because you'll get a foothold on a machine, then you'll pivot onto the internal network, and then you'll eventually end up compromising an Active Directory environment. The OSCP actually used to require pivoting. I think they just made new changes. Now they have like the OSCP Plus, and you don't need to know how to pivot anymore. And they did that because a lot of pen tests these days are assumed breach, or assumed compromise, so you start on the internal. And so that's why on number 3, I say it's for red teaming pen tests. Depends on who you ask. They're completely different engagements. And so if it's in scope, you can do pivoting for penetration testing as well. Okay, so some ways to pivot. It goes from like super simple to a little bit more in-depth and more accessible. You can use SOCAT to do some port forwarding where you can either just access one port from one internal machine to potentially go into SSH local port forwarding where you can access the same one port, but I think you can access more machines. Then SSH dynamic port forwarding, which is really beneficial to access all the ports on a single machine. But if you are in a scenario where you have SSH credentials, I would highly recommend SSH Shuttle. I call it that just so you don't get confused on what I'm talking about. But it basically works almost like a VPN. You use your SSH credentials or maybe an IDRSA key, and then you're able to access the network just like a VPN. It's really nice. Something you can learn is Chisel. Also, it's pretty powerful, and you can really access so many things on an internal network. But today we're going to be talking about Ligolo-ng and how there are a few limitations on it, but to get it up and running after you have initial access, it is so easy, it is crazy. So I kind of wanted to tell you my experience on how I discovered Ligolo-ng. So I was working on an internal penetration test, and how the company I work for does that is they'll send a machine to a client, and then the client will actually plug that machine into their network, and so it's an assumed compromise scenario. And with this machine, you can actually access it to have either CLI, like you can just use it from the command line, or you can actually use like a graphical interface like you were on a workstation in the network. And so for this specific pen test, how I like to do it is I do additional scans, and I even kick off a vulnerability scan. And so the vulnerability scanner that I like to use relies heavily on the graphical interface. But like I said, or I don't know if I said this yet, but the graphical interface was not working on this internal machine. So I was like, gosh, dang it. I like to also provide my clients with the penetration testing report, also the vulnerability scan report that I also was able to generate. And so it's just really nice, clean report, and that's just how I like to do it. And so the problem was it wasn't working. So my next thought was, hey, maybe I can see if I can still get this tool to run from the command line. I don't know how many of you have used tools that have a ton of different Python dependencies, but it can be the biggest flipping headache in the world. They're in different environments, or they're not the same version, and it will only update some versions in some environments. And anyway, it is painful. And so I was not able to end up getting the command line version of that tool to work. And so then I went down this rabbit hole of, hey, what other are there any good vulnerability scanning tools out there that are in the command line? And the short answer, no. There are some great tools that if you can install agents on your target machines, you can do great, which is a lot better for a blue teamer than it is somebody on the red team side of things. And so that didn't work. So I was like, you know what? The vulnerability scanner that I use is hosted on a port. So if I can just get access to that single port from my machine, I can actually access this vulnerability scanner. And so then I started going through kind of this previous list where I was like, I just need a single port. I don't need anything crazy. But this company's network was actually really secure. And so some of these easier things to do, they actually were blocking the network traffic. At least that's how it seemed. I was not able to connect to that machine doing these different methods, whether it was SSH or the SOCAP port forwarding or, or SSH shuttle. And so I was just asking some of my contracting coworkers, like, hey, here's my scenario. Like, what were some of the suggestions? And I had a guy reach out, and he was like, hey, I've never used this tool before, but I've heard it's pretty good. It's called Ligolo-ng. And my first thought was, freak that. I have all these other tools I know how to use. Let me try that first. And then I will go ahead and maybe use Ligolo, but I don't think I'll need to get to that point. Turns out I did need to get to that point. I tried to get so many different things set up and running, and just none of it was working. And so I caved, and I was like, you know what? Let me try Ligolo-ng. And so after I had read through the documentation, made sure I had kind of the verbiage that they use correct, so I was identifying how it works within the network, then I was like, okay, I think I can get this done. And then within 5-10 minutes, I had access to the whole internal network from my attacker machine at home. So it was super beneficial. It was so easy to set up, and then it just works. So today I'm going to be telling you how to use Ligolo-ng. If you want to look up the documentation, it's super easy. You just Google Ligolo-ng GitHub. The docs link to Ligolo-ng is on the GitHub. If you're worried about, if you're worried about GitHub and you are wary, you can look for this. I don't know how to say it, Nico Cha 30 guy. But yeah, so I'm going to go through these 3 different steps. I'm going to show you how to install the tool. I'm going to tell you how to activate the tool and how to make sure the session is going. Okay, so the first thing I kind of want to point out is this diagram I have in the bottom left-hand corner, because the verbiage here is really important. Ligolo-ng kind of works in 2 different applications. They have a proxy side and an agent side. So you need to know which side is the proxy side and which side is the agent side. And I actually got this diagram from the docs. So you can go to the docs and it'll have the same diagram if you ever get confused. In this scenario, I wanted to assume you're using a Kali machine and you got an initial foothold onto a Windows machine. I wanted to do Windows just to show, yes, of course it's possible on Linux, because it seems that so many things are, but can you actually get this tool to work on a Windows machine? So to start off, the nice thing about Ligolo and how it is growing is that it's actually been added to the Kali apt repository. So just a simple apt install command will get Ligolo-ng installed onto your machine. With the foothold or the Windows machine, it's going to be a little bit more involved. So what you're going to do is, I'm going to tell you an ideal scenario, that on your Kali machine, you're going to go to the releases. You're going to go to the Ligolo website and you want to go to the releases page, and you're going to want to find the specific application that you want to go for. So on this Windows machine, I knew it was an AMD machine. And so what I was wanting to do is then I want to get that agent onto that Windows machine. Again, this is important. There's going to be 2 different versions. You're going to see, there's 2 different Windows AMD. The thing to pay attention is one's going to be agent and one's going to be a proxy. And for the foothold, it's the agent. So you're going to use this curl command with a capital L and a capital O dash on both of those, and then you're going to just paste the link to the specific application that you want, and then it'll download that. I looked it up. Curl is installed by default on the command line in Windows. That's something else I wanted to mention, is that I wanted to just say, let's assume you have a foothold on this Windows machine and you only have command line access. Like, you're not going to be doing the graphical stuff. So I wanted to make sure this was very Windows friendly. And then again, from what I looked up and researched, tar is also by default on the Windows command line. So if you just do tar-xf, you can unzip this file. Okay, so to move on, we're going to start on the Kali attacker side. So you're going to do these commands, and what you're basically doing is making a tunnel interface that you can use to just basically add almost like a VPN connection. It's going to look very similar to your Kali machine. So you're going to do sudo IP tuntap add user, and then we're going to assume, let's just say it's default Kali credentials, so your username's Kali. So you're going to do sudo IP tuntap add user Kali, and then mode tun Ligolo. And then after you enter that command, you'll just enter this next command, sudo IP link set Ligolo up. They do, on the documentation, have something built in that it can do this for you, but I just wanted to do this a little more manual way because, 1, it's literally 2 commands, incredibly easy, and 2, just in case you run into where the automated side doesn't work for you. So then now we're going to actually activate Ligolo within Kali. And again, like I said, there's a proxy side and an agent side. So we're going to be typing in Ligolo-ng and then proxy because we're on the Kali machine, and then dash self-cert. The documentation is so important in everything, but if you want to use a different kind of cert, you can actually use your own cert, and the documentation will walk you through how to do that. I just wanted to make it a little bit more simple on this side. So once you have that proxy set up, you'll see that it'll like start Ligolo, and it's just going to be awaiting connections at this point. So then we're going to go to the foothold side, and it's going to be a similar process as the last slide. You're going to actually need to grab the drivers, a WinTon driver, and this is going to allow the agent to run on the Windows machine. So you're going to go to this WinTon website. You're going to go find the link for the correct driver for the Windows machine you're using, and then you're going to use the same curl command on that link that you found for the download that you want to do. And then you're just going to copy the drivers to the agent side. And if you get confused, I'll have information on how you can contact me at the end. And if you want a more in-depth process on what that looks like, you can ask me, I can show you. But it was super similar to what we did in the previous slide, so I just didn't add it. So from there, you will be able to just do it / the period stands for your current working directory, and then the / agent is going to run the application you just installed on your Windows machine, and then you're going to do -connect. And right here where it says attacker C2 server, you're actually going to put the IP address of your Kali machine. And you're going to target that same port. That just means we're trying to connect to that Kali machine. It's waiting a connection, and we're trying to connect to it. Makes sense, right? So then you'll see, once you run this command, that a connection will be detected on the proxy side. And all you have to do is type session1, and then that connection is formed, and Kali has made that connection. So the last thing is the session. So we're going to switch back, and we're actually going to start on the foothold side for this one. And this is the last thing you need to do before you can pivot and access that internal network. Is right here, we're on a Windows machine. I took this screenshot from the documentation. That's why it says ifconfig. But if you know Windows, the command is actually ipconfig. Okay, you'll type in ipconfig, and then it'll pop out a bunch of interfaces. You want to look for the subnet that you want to interact with. So in this case, we see the subnet that's 192.168.0. And it says 30 for the IP address, but then a /24. So we're going to target this network, and we want to interact with all the machines that are on this /24. And so we're going to copy that, and we're going to go back over to the Kali machine, and then we're going to do sudo IP route add, and then a similar 192.168, and then .0.0, and then /24, because we're trying to go for the full subnet. And then you're going to do dev Ligolo. And after that, you can then start running scans, and you can start interacting with the internal network, and it's actually really, really powerful. It seems like I talked a lot up here, and it seems maybe a little bit complicated, but once you actually start doing it, you're like, I just need to input like 6 or 7 commands, and then this is set up. It's really nice. So here is some disclaimers. What do you need administrator or root access on your machines? So you only need that on your proxy machine, or in this instance, your Kali machine. You need that to be able to add a ton interface. But on your actual foothold machine, you don't need that access. I will kind of add another disclaimer to that, which is on Windows, by default, Windows Defender will catch the Ligolo-ng, and so you'll potentially need to try some evasion techniques so that the file doesn't automatically get thrown in the trash or get prevented from being downloaded. And then down here, there are some limitations because you're not running the agent on a privileged connection. So some of your Nmap scans will be limited, but if you use these flags, the -- unprivileged or $P_E, you can avoid false positives and still run some Nmap scans. So What do you do after you pivot? That's why they call it a cycle, this ethical hacking cycle. Like I said, pivoting falls really around maintaining access and covering tracks on that side of things. So pivoting will then, once you got that established, you're going to just start again. You're going to start enumerating and getting things done, and you're going to compromise that domain controller. Thank you. That is all that I have for today. If you want to reach out to me or get more information on ethical hacking in general, or specifically on Ligolo-ng, you can reach me on Discord just by trying to add me by NeoSite. Just if you're doing that, just add a little note that you saw my presentation, so that I know you're not a weirdo. Well, you might still be a weirdo, but that's for you. But you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. The fun part about having the name Jacob Smith is there's 100 of them. So, or probably more like 1 million. So you might have a tough time finding me on LinkedIn, but just look for a security engineer who works in Utah, and then you'll be fine. But yeah, thank you so much.